Juletane by Myriam. Worn of Vieyra Tuesday, September the 5th, 1961. I am in the hospital again, in a cottage. I am very calm and lucid. I found my exercise book. There are only 2 blank pages left. I had hidden it around my waist, under my dress. I must finish my journal. It is the only legacy I am leaving to Mamadou. I hope he will read it, and will understand how far from my dream he was. The nurse looked at me just now, leafing through my notebook. I smiled at her, and, reassured, she went away. Last Sunday I went into the kitchen. After imagining Vieyra's bloody murder, while looking at the knife, I hit upon the first idea which came into my agitated brain. I poured a liter of oil into a saucepan, and I heated it. The first time I thought about revenge, I thought about taking Vieyra's life. But all things considered, it was better that she continue to live, disfigured, so that as long as she lived, she could think about how she had hurt me. All the more so as I had not been able to do away with her. With the knife and all that blood, I could not have done it. Armed with my saucepan full of very hot oil, I went to the room. The door creaked, and Vieyra did not budge. She was lying on her side, her face towards the wall. I wanted her full face, with her eyes open. I called her, touching her on the shoulder. When she opened her eyes, wondering what was happening, with the other hand which I had kept hidden behind my back, I poured the whole pan full of oil in her face. She howled like a wounded animal and leapt out of bed. It was easy to get out of her way, for she could not see. I went and locked myself in my room, and Vieyra groped her way to the gate. A neighbor took her to the hospital. I have not seen her again since. I hope she will live long enough to remember. The little servant girl came and the curious bystanders each went back home. Very few people knew that I existed. I remained in a state of nervous prostration all day long, with periods of lucidity. In the evening Mamadou and his uncle arrived. Someone had told them. I remember that I told him. She hit me, and God punished her. I did not touch her, repeating the same words over and over. I believed what I was saying, having spent the whole day telling myself over and over again that I was innocent, that I was the victim of a fate over which I had no control. So Mamadou brought me here. They gave me an injection and I spent a peaceful night. Yesterday my head was not very clear. A light mist enveloped everything around me. Still I could make out a faint glimmer of light way above me which revealed the outline of a well. A languorous melody ran through my veins, rocking me gently, carrying me away. A sweet smell, coming from far away and long ago, reminded me of an emerald countryside. A cool, limpid stream gurgled in my ear. Then all at once I heard a call which had been resounding in my mind for years. Come back to your island. Today I am waiting for Mamadou. He will certainly come this evening. I will give him this notebook, my confidant and my witness. There are lots of shadowy areas in my memory and things I can't explain. Did I really lose my mind at times? I had not expected ours death. On Sunday the 27th at supper, we had a meal of boiled millet, prepared by Awa. She ate, and then got up from the table, leaving me alone with the children. Did I pour the contents of the medicine bottle into the children's drinking cup? Or did I leave the bottle where they could reach it? I don't remember anything. I had taken the bottle intending to swallow a few drops, as I sometimes did to have a quiet night. I found it empty in the pocket of my dress. The next day, the day after the children's death, I could not explain how it had got there. Perhaps it was not properly closed and spilled accidentally. I prefer this explanation. I would not like to know I was responsible for the death of the children. I was fond of them. I did not wish them any harm. However, their death had pierced Mamadou's armor of indifference. A few years ago, when we moved into our present home, Awa's house, Mamadou had the courtyard cemented. "It will be cleaner and easier to keep than sand," he said. In the middle, he planted a mango tree which was already fairly big. Every day Awa would water it, adding manure regularly. The mango tree grew rapidly. After 2 rainy seasons, the foliage was already beautiful and lush, and we could sit in its shade. Until today it has never borne any fruit, whereas other trees in the neighborhood, much less healthy, have mangoes. Recently, Awa said to me that it must be a barren tree, her look said, like you, and that in the long run she regretted having lavished her care on it to no avail. In both cases, Mamadou had had no luck. I too was that barren tree, that tree which I saw every morning interminably. I thought that apart from the seasons nothing would ever come to alter the rhythm of our narrow little lives around the mango tree. But what can man do to halt the march of time? No one can say tomorrow I will do this, or I will not do that. The memory of the entire world carved in stone, not traced on fresh parchment, cannot change the fact that the human heart is forgetful by nature. If my reason wandered from time to time, who is to blame? A phrase which I once read comes to mind. He who creates a monster of pain should not be surprised if one day he is destroyed by it. Who said these words? Where did I read them? Was I this monster of pain? I don't know. The only truth I know is that under the thick clay of the walls I have at last found the crack which allowed me to escape from the pit. Wednesday, September the 6th, 1961. 4:30 p.m. A nurse gave me a few sheets of paper, so I can continue to write. Last night it rained all night. This morning when I woke up a curtain of rain hid the horizon. I could not leave my room until about 9 o'clock. A few patients were walked up and down the veranda. I went to the nurse's station, where a whole group of women chatted or babbled away happily, taking different medications under the watchful but benevolent eye of 2 nurses. One of the patients with whom I had exchanged a few words the day before followed me back to my room to chat. Her name is Ami. Her husband, she told me, had locked her up in one room for 2 years, and was living with another woman. They often forgot to give her anything to eat. Then she would scream and knock on the door. They said she was mad, and one day she was brought here. Speaks good French, and seems like a very pleasant person. My knowledge of their native language is still very imprecise, but I am able to exchange a few remarks with the other patients, since some of them speak a little French. Some of them are accompanied by a relative. It seems to me that they are all victims of a selfish world which crushes them carelessly. For me, life here is an improvement over the solitude and hostility of these last 2 years in Mamadou's house. The nurses are all cheerful and kind. You can hardly distinguish them from the patients and relatives, because they don't wear uniforms. I am very happy to be alone in my room. It is a round hut, thatched with straw. The bed is on the left inside the entrance. On the right, under the window, are a table and 2 chairs. Behind a floral curtain, there is a basin and a mirror. The doctor who came to see me yesterday is young and sympathetic. Our conversation was in no way like the interrogation I had been through in Mamadou's presence, when I had seen the doctor a few years before. He asked me if I remembered when I first became ill. I couldn't answer, since I had never thought of myself as ill, which made him smile. Did I know that the children and Mamadou's first wife were dead? Yes, I knew, but I did not know what had brought about their deaths. Had I thrown hot oil on the third wife? Where that was concerned, I remembered everything. Nevertheless, I said no. Since I had decided that Ndaya had never existed, I could not have attacked her. He talked about dissemblance, of primary, secondary, chronic depression, of various medicines with difficult names. Everything was transcribed in my presence on my clinic notes with comments from other doctors who were doing residencies, and a nurse. Then they gave me the usual examination. Blood pressure, chest, temperature, etc. I think I have certainly suffered from depression from time to time. Since yesterday, however, I am convinced that I am in full possession of my faculties. I know exactly where I am. The pit, the mud, where I thought I was, the earthworms are far away, once and for all. Mamadou did not come to see me yesterday, as I had hoped. I think he stayed with Ndaya, who is certainly more ill than I am right now. I don't hold it against him anymore. My vengeance once accomplished now seems useless. What a mess. Ndaya in one hospital, I in another, Arwa in the other world, to watch over her children. Almi came to see me again. She is very curious about what I'm writing. I explained to her that I am trying to remember my life, and that she should do the same, because it helps one to take stock of oneself. She thinks it is a waste of time, white people's business. I am going to stop writing now, to go for a walk in the yard with Almi and meet the other women. Friday, September the 8th, 1961. Yesterday I did not have time to write in my diary. The whole day was filled with group activities. Cooking, housework, and sewing. Plus the constant coming and going of the women in the afternoon. Besides, I don't seem to have anything worth writing about. Last night, my father came to see me. He reproached me for having forgotten him, and spoke to me about my mother. We went together to her tomb. It was All Souls Day and we lit a lot of candles. The whole cemetery was transformed into a sea of light. A lot of people stood near the vaults. My attention was attracted by an abandoned tomb, overgrown with grass. I pulled up a few tufts to clear a spot, and lit a candle. Watching it burn, I had the impression of being inside and outside the grave at the same time. It was my tomb. There was no name on it. This dream certainly had some deep significance which I could not grasp since it was different from my usual nightmares. This morning, after taking my shower and my medication, I went to visit some of the women in their rooms. I talked for a long time with Almi, and with Nabu, who told me her story. She had gone to Paris to join her husband. When she got to France, where she could not speak French, she found herself completely cut off from the traditional family lifestyle of her village. Her husband was away at work all day, so she was alone, locked up, without being able to communicate with anyone. A few months later she fell ill. Her husband could not take care of her, so he sent her back home, and her family brought her to the hospital. She feels very well now, but she doesn't want to go back to France. She wants her husband to come back, so that they can go back to live in their village. Nabu's experience in Paris strangely parallels my life in this country. We both knew the loneliness of being the foreigner who had nothing to do but turn over memories for days on end, who had only one voice to listen to, her own, until it became an obsession. 8 p.m. Aunt Katie came to see me a little while ago, about 6 o'clock. What she told me has upset me a lot. had I, in spite of everything, clung to a vague hope that I would win back Mamadou's affection and esteem. I realize now that I wanted to see him suffer, but I had never consciously thought of his death. His eyes are closed to the light of this world. He has set off on the final journey, on the road to the village. That was where he was going last Sunday, very late at night, after he had brought me here. He lost control of his old car, which struck a tree and caught fire. I feel drained. I have no one to love, no one to hate. I can put the final period to this diary which Mamadou will never read. I had put on mourning and cut off my hair the day I stopped living with Mamadou. For me, the world had ended on that day. Here I am today, after 4 years of reprieve, finally, really, all alone in the world, my heart bereft of hope. Had my life been worth living? What had I contributed? What had I given? Oh, how I long to fall asleep too, to have a long, restful night, to wake up in another world, where mad people are not mad, but wise and just. Helene had reached the end of Juletane diary. The chanting from a neighboring mosque signaled 5 o'clock. She was not sleepy. The alcohol could no longer affect her. She felt a certain melancholy. She had not known that Juletane's life had been so full of drama, and in particular, that she had suffered so much. Now, in her turn, she asked herself the questions which had been preoccupying her. Could she have a child at her age? Was she right to be getting married? Ousman, of course, was nothing like Mamadou, and she was the exact opposite of Juletane, but still, why had she kept this notebook without having opened it? The social worker in the psychiatric services had entrusted it to her so that she could get an idea of how much Juletane had suffered and try to find her family. She had not read it. On her return from her holidays she had phoned her colleague to tell her the results of her effort. Juletane's aunt, whom she had found, had refused to take on the responsibility of a sick niece. Helene had subsequently learned that since her husband's death Juletane had ceased to react. She refused to eat, and medication seemed to have no effect on her condition. Each day she slipped a little deeper into her dream which could only lead her to final deliverance. Helene tenderly smoothed the bent corners of the notebook, closed it, and, for the first time in almost 20 years, she wept. Juletane's diary had broken the block of ice around her heart. Epilogue: Juletane's reprieve lasted 3 months after Mamadou's death. One morning the nurse on duty had found her dead. Her weary heart had simply stopped beating.